Hi, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Compliance for March 2021. We have a few hundred folks joining us today for what's a really hot topic across all process manufacturing, whether you're food and beverage or plastics and packaging, really just any and all CPG. We're talking about root cause analysis and how it informs CAPA. My name is Aaron Bolshaw, and for those of you joining us for the first time, Beyond Compliance is a periodic industry update for process manufacturers. The goal is simple, just bring you insights around the market that shape the way you grow our businesses, deliver quality products to customers, and safeguard our brands, all while being compliant with all the numerous regulations we all share here and there. So the webinar sponsors for this series is SafetyChain. And for those of you that don't know who SafetyChain is, we're the #1 plant management platform trusted by over 1,500 manufacturing facilities to improve yield, maximize productivity, and ensure compliance. And we're scheduled for about an hour today. Okay, we'll stay flexible. We want to hear from you. A lot of good engagement comes from just the questions you all have for us. And so please, write to us in the webinar console on your right there. When you have a question, pop it in there. We'll save some time at the end of the webinar to go through those, okay? And then this is a little different, but if you do want to get the slides and the recording from today, just ask. We'll be sending that out in the next few days. So with that, just want to introduce our panelists today. Have the incredible fortune to be presenting with Kevin Lee today. He's been in manufacturing, supply chain, distribution for over 25 years, and I think the chances are he's likely toured maybe some of your facilities with a few hundred people that we have on board here. So he's been everywhere, but happy to have him on the SafetyChain team. Kevin's specialties range from quality and risk management to compliance, and has a deep background and experience with ERP and plant management software integrations, and even the ERP WMS implementations. Both here in North America and also around the world. So welcome, Kevin, welcome to Beyond Compliance.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited to present to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is interesting. This is, Kevin and I are happy to report that for the first time in what seems like forever, we're broadcasting from SafetyChain corporate headquarters in Nevada, California together. We're actually in the same office, but we're in separate rooms, right, Kevin? Because COVID. So we're, but still very happy to have you in the home office. You're normally out of Florida, making the magic happen. So welcome also. So Kevin, why don't you take over? Why don't you start? Just give us a level set for anyone that's just not familiar with root cause analysis, or what we also call RCA. Why don't you take us through the top line there?
Oh, thank you, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, I'm going to talk about what is root cause analysis and how it informs CAPA. And interesting little quick story. I was talking to someone on the plane as I was flying out here. I said, yeah, I have a presentation on RCA. And they're like, oh, you're going to talk about the record company. And I just smiled and I said, no, we're going to talk about root cause analysis. And as I'm talking to this seatmate on the plane that was in the other row, of course, socially distanced, I was in the center seat. That person was in the other center seat. We're screaming across the aisle. I was telling them about what the root cause analysis is. And it's really important to understand in all organizations, in all environments, we're going to come across a situation, an issue, a problem, a concern, an event that we need to figure out how do we eliminate this problem? How do I resolve this issue? And root cause analysis is a systematic way for you to identify what a problem is, ascertain how and why it happened, and then come up with a method, a systematic company-wide method to ensure that we can eliminate this problem from ever happening again. So here on my particular screen, you'll see it's a method to help identify what and how we had an event. So I won't read to you because we can all read ourselves, but it's really essential to understand that the purpose of the root cause is to get to the underlying issue of why this event occurred. and it's an application, and it's used in all industries. And I'm going to get into this presentation. I'm going to get into how do we systematically come up with investigation tools to ensure that we truly have the root cause. How do you know whether you have a symptom or the cause? Well, through this conversation, I like to call it a conversation presentation webinar, Aaron. And as we go through this information, we're going to figure out and glean the best way to identify root causes and eliminate problems. And we're going to see how we can use that with its partner called the CAPA.
Awesome.
All right. And I'm ready to go. Before I go to the next slide, I just want to, at the 30,000 foot, we're setting out, well, what's the goal of the root cause? I always say the first and foremost goal is defined in the title. It's to discover the root cause of the problem, period. We want to ensure, and by pulling up something from the root, I have a brown thumb, but I play in my garden. I'm starting to learn how to grow things. But if you get it at the root, you don't have to worry about it coming back again. So we want to weed out this concern. That's the first goal. The second goal is to understand how to correct the problem. It's a problem, we need to correct it. And the last one is, how do we ensure that it doesn't come back again? Because if it comes back again, that means we didn't have the root cause. So that's what we're going to discuss, and that's what we're going to go through.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions from you, Aaron, or I'm going to just continue to go?
No,
All
you
right.
keep going. It's funny because, you know, I'm sure a lot of people on the line can sort of understand this. You know, a lot of times you do these exercises, and sometimes you find like it's a person, right? And so you just kind of shuffle it off to, oh, must be training. I'd encourage you, if you're continuing to see the root causes as training, go do it again, right? If training, if you've applied more training or you've adjusted that going forward and you still see that keeps popping up, there's something else at fault. So we'll get more into that a little bit later, but yeah, no, root causes. I mean, you said you had a brown thumb. There's roots underneath all these plants that you're hopefully growing, right?
Exactly. And you know, you're right. I'm so glad you started with training. Some of my friends who are auditors, regulators, training is a usually I don't want to call it a lazy man, but it's not a full due diligence way of coming up to a source of a problem. We want to get to the specific underlying causes of this, and how do we ensure that the root cause isn't a human factor? How do we ensure that perhaps it's the root cause may be a design failure? We didn't anticipate the usage of the field, and our customer used the product and generated a complaint to us. We do our analysis, and we find out that the systemic reasons why we're getting a lot of customer complaints is because the device was designed incorrectly, or the package wasn't designed properly to address the customer's specifications. And let's think about it in a theoretical perspective. When I say theoretical, remember, the root cause is to eliminate. First, you got to identify the problem and then eliminate the problem. But what does a problem really mean? Let's get back to the first principles of what is a problem. In my world, I say a problem is when you don't meet the customer's specifications. If you fail below the customer specifications or expectations, then it's a problem. If you exceed it, it's not really a problem if you exceed expectations. But if you fail below the customer specs, any deviation really from that customer specs is going to generate a complaint. Similarly, if I'm looking at something from a manufacturing process and I get non-conformances, maybe it's because the machine wasn't calibrated properly. The manufacturing didn't have the right materials to create the production run. Well, what's the root cause of this happening all the time? So when we fail to meet specifications, we generate issues, we generate problems, and the root cause can come in a lot of different types. I listed one as a design failure, but it's possible it can be a process failure. It can be suppliers' concerns. And this is an example. Let's assume everything's been going along properly, and abruptly something just goes awry. And you're like, what's going on here? You do your investigation, you do your root cause analysis, you determine that your supplier gave you a new revision. You didn't authorize that change. You wanted Rev A. They sent you Rev B, and it's causing havoc for you. So we're going to talk about where you opened up a supplier scar because your analysis determined, your root cause analysis, determined that the supplier switched the revision on you and it caused havoc on your production floor. So this is just some examples, but the goal, the underlying, what are the root causes, specific underlying issues that we're trying to root out to ensure that we are achieving, eliminating problems and adhering to specifications.
Yeah, and I think, Kevin, in that whole scenario there, we then start to say, well, what is a CAPA, right? Like these things kind of coexist, right? We'll be getting to some methods a little bit later on. We're actually going to show some screenshots of how you can really lean into the data side of it a little bit more to help longer term process to be a little bit more stable and to actually find those problems, fix them once and for good. But tell us, just kind of CAPA high level.
Awesome. And you know what, it's think of it like this, analysis for analysis sake. I always say if the root cause is the subject, I'm going a little ethereal now. If the root cause is the subject, the CAPA is the action, it's the verb. It's saying, all right, we had this problem, we identified the root cause of this problem, and I want to talk about ways we can do that. But the CAPA is first and foremost, you have to correct the problem. How do I correct this problem so it doesn't occur? I can eliminate the problem right now. And so correction action says, let me correct the problem, get everything okay. And the preventive action is how do I ensure the reoccurrence of this? And we're going to get into some effectiveness reviews, lessons learned, but if I go in 6 months later, I have the same problem that I had last year at this time, that tells me my preventive action wasn't proper or I didn't get to the root cause. So when we look at it now, I want to expand a little bit on this CAPA because there are certain actions where they're immediate actions. I have a problem, I need to fix it now. And that's like, okay, I'm gonna just fix the problem now. That's an immediate action, immediate correction. But then I'm gonna get into a longer term analysis of assessment and my root cause analysis that says I'm going to root out this problem and correct it and prevent it. So let's look at those words, the word CAPA, corrective action, preventive action. Now there's a lot of you on the line, on the call, and we appreciate your attendance and I appreciate you listening to me, but depending upon the industry, some people call it CARs and PARs. CAR, which is corrective action report, PAR, preventive action report. I worked in some industries, aerospace and defense and automotive, sometimes they call it 8D CAPA. And that's just saying, these are the phases I'll go through in order to eliminate this problem, and your investigation and root causes fall within that. So all of these different titles boil down to the same concept, depending upon your industries, but the goal is, I got a problem, it's identified, I want to have a systemic way to address this problem with the root cause analysis, and I want to make sure I have some sort of plan to prevent it from occurring again. So that's what a CAPA is. And so they play together. If you do a root cause without a CAPA, you're doing, it's like I'm trying to drive with two tires and I need four. You can't balance the organization if you don't have both. Aaron?
Yeah, very good.
All right, thank you. So now let's just go a little, I'm gonna pull back the onion. I'm from Florida. Let's take off a little bit of the orange peel and get a little deeper here. What is the connection between the root cause and the CAPA? I called it the subject and the verb, or let's call it the right hand, left hand. But I have a systemic way for discovering a problem. First, I identify the problem and systemic way of trying to eliminate it. But then once again, it's the correction. Correction is very important. I spoke with someone on the plane. I'll respond back to my person on the plane. And I said, well, he was in a different industry, and in his industry, they didn't do root causes or whatever he did in his world. He wasn't subject to a lot of problems, as he said. But I said, well, think of it. I can apply a root cause analysis or a CAPA to any situation, any concern that is not proper. And I said, imagine this. He was hung up a little bit on the immediate action versus the corrective action a little bit long term. And I said, well, you're driving on your car and you get a flat on the side of the road, you're on a freeway, that's an immediate problem you need to correct right now. You can't wait till later. You're driving with your family and the radio goes out. Well, I'm still going to drive down to Miami, but once again, that's a problem I need to correct and figure out, oh, when I got the battery changed, they didn't connect the right wires. So I'm going to get to the root cause of that, but I can continue going with this so it's not an immediate action. So the corrections and preventions are hand in hand in the sense that if you don't correct the problem, you correct the problem, but if you don't put in measures to prevent it, it'll always come back. All right.
All right. So right now, what I would want to do is just get everyone's attention really quick. We're going to launch a poll, and just a reminder, we don't know who's saying what, but we're gonna ask you all a quick question on your screen. If you would take a look at it, it's coming up in just a second. We want to ask you, how many CAPAs did you process in 2020? Right, and this is just an estimate. You don't need to pull out any reports or anything like that, but kudos if you are able to, by the way, go to a quick maybe application or some software that you have to say exactly how many you processed in 2020. That would indicate to me that you've got a pretty good process that's data rich, data driven. And take a few minutes, about 30 seconds to go through this. I like guessing. I like guesstimating. We've got, like I said, a few hundred people on the phone. I'm guessing most of them are going to be between that 6 to 10, right? Now this is, and you know this, right, Kevin, like this is going to depend on how many facilities. Is it just my facility? Can I just talk about my line, right? Like, so there's going to be some wide variances. So this is just going to be a fun poll, but we're wrapping up here. We got about 62% people voted. Do you think, where do you think this is going to land between what's your guess, Kevin?
My guess is that I want to say 10 plus, because the reason why, and I think I'm looking with a little bit biased information, Aaron, and the reason why I say that is last year, this month is where we shut down because of the COVID, and I just anticipate a lot of people had problems that they didn't anticipate or things that occurred that they weren't familiar with, and they had to come up with a way to mitigate or deal with this new situation of working from home, and there was just new issues that occurred. So I'm going to say 10 plus. And look at there, I was lucky. I was right.
You nailed it, Kevin. Yeah, so you're exactly right. And I hadn't even thought about, boy, think about all of the different nuanced problems that came up. The COVID stress tested all of our facilities, period, every which way, right? So very good. We'll do another couple of polls in a few minutes. So I appreciate everyone sharing their attention there. But ultimately, it's not how many CAPAs you do. It's how you do them. So let's talk a little bit about, Kevin, why are they required? What's the big deal, right?
Right, and looking at that poll, some people, there were 6% I think said they had 0 CAPAs in 12 months. That's beyond impressive. That tells me that they have a well-run machine. They have processes in place. Their customers don't have there's not many complaints. There's no problems with their suppliers, so they don't have to send out complaints to your suppliers, which means those are supplier CAPAs. Those customers are impressive, and they're probably, yeah, that's awesome. So let's look at this and go a little bit further. Once again, why are RCAs, root cause analysis, and CAPAs required? Well, certain industries, if you're in the life sciences industry, or even your GMP, your ISO, you're regulated, this is showing that the process is showing that you have a systematic way of dealing with problems and issues. Auditors, regulators like to know, we know problems are going to exist. I mean, there's no one, if you have a perfect plant, a perfect business, a perfect enterprise, and you're blessed with the opportunity of having 0 problems, you're in business nirvana, but the rest of us, you're going to be problems. And what we need to do is have a systematic way to ensure that we can deal with the problem when it occurs, and we can identify the problem, get to the root cause, the source of the problem, and in a procedure to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And when you're looking at quality or continuous improvement, a strong root cause analysis and a strong CAPA process ensures that you're constantly improving your enterprise as you go forward in time. And what does that mean? One way I can look at it here is customer complaints, non-conformances, out of spec OOS, out of spec situations. How many incidents do we have? How many manufacturing variances? If I look at your SPC information, statistical process control, in the food industry, and I know we have a lot of representatives from different areas, that's why I'm using examples from automotive and life sciences, and now I throw one on food. Another one is giveaways. If I'm exceeding my weight limits beyond my upper control limit, that either becomes giveaway or waste or scrap or something that I am not managing. What's the root cause of that? So maybe it might be the equipment. So why are they required? They're required because it helps us become great businesses. It helps us adhere to our customer specifications and become continuously improved. We can continuously improve our processes over time with these good systems. Okay. So I dropped some of these words or mentioned some of these words in my last, I guess, monologue. I guess I apologize. I love this stuff. I don't know if you can feel my passion, but I've been doing this for 25 years, and I just love to jump into a plant and see a situation and see how we, myself with my tools and experience, our SafetyChain platform, how we can provide value to you. But when you look at it from if I had a little Visio chart, what's the inputs to RCA? Well, think of it like this. I talked about a non-conformance. Here's maybe a non-conformance coming from your suppliers. I ordered an item ordered 100 on the 100 items. The supplier sent me 95. I ordered 100, they sent me 110. All right, ordered it on the 15th, they sent it to me on the 10th. I ordered it on the 15th, they sent it to me on the 20th. Well, those are non-conformances. One, I have a time non-conformance. Another one, I have a quantity non-conformance. And let's get to the real problem. I ordered blue and he sends red. I ordered 8 inches, he sent me 12. So now I got a quality of dimension non-conformance. So all these non-conformances, what happened? Did we get the wrong price? Did we get not the wrong price? Did we had set up the wrong proposal? Why are we having these problems? Because every one of these problems is creating problems within my facility. Mm-hmm. And then let's say I didn't catch it at the non-conformance at the raw material phase. Heaven forbid it gets through my plant on the truck to my customer. They're not happy now. They're sending me complaints. So a complaint is a failure of a process to catch a problem when it was early. So now I have a increasing, here's a test you can do. We didn't put it as a poll, but if you do a delta, the number of complaints in 2020 versus 2019 versus 2018, those are 3 points. Is it going up or is it going down? If your complaints are going up, we need a better process of our root cause analysis and CAPAs to ensure we capture those and better meet and exceed our expectations. Deviations is another one. I'm deviating from the spec when I try to make something, when I feel something. Incidents, why am I having problems? Why are people falling over things? Why are things not properly identified? These incidents, I need to get to the root cause of why my new representative ran into the warehouse and knocked over the rack. Well, it's because the lanes may not have been properly defined. And recalls. If you have recalls you have a lot of returns, the customer sends it back to you. Recalls itself, we're telling you to bring it back to us. That's a failure because we need to take these incidents, these events, I'll just group them all as an event, all as these different titles as events. We need to take those events and come up with a process, a root cause analysis and a correction and a preventive action so we can ensure to reduce the volume of these problems. So that's one. I'm going to go back one. I hit it a little too fast. Now, once again, the output of an RCA, I say this repeatedly and repetitively, is because the corrective action is a process. The preventive action, it has a life of its own, meaning I identified the source of the problem. I did my investigation. Now I need to implement. It's one thing to say, okay, look, yeah, okay, I have a flat on the side of the road. Okay, I'm gonna just sit here with the flat. I'm not gonna fix it. But now I'm gonna correct it. And then I'm gonna say, okay, how do I ensure that this correction is eliminate the problem? Maybe I'll go and do a follow-up. I'll go and do some analysis and make sure. And here was a question that the guy said to me on the plane. He said, well, Kevin, my name's Kevin Lee, and he says, how do you know you found the root cause after you do your investigation? So like I said, we're going to talk about different investigation tools. This happens with everyone all the time. The most common one is the 5 whys. So I gave him 5 whys and I 5 why'd him, and he was just like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, my kid used to do that to me. But that's a valid technique to do your investigation. But I'm going to talk about another tool. But when I find the root cause and I remove it, the problem goes away. I bring the root cause back, the problem comes back again. I could throttle my problem based upon the root cause. So that's when I know I got to the very root cause and not the symptom of a problem. When to conduct the root cause analysis? Seems like it's an obvious question. It should have a direct answer. It's whenever you have a problem. Whenever you have a problem that I need to ensure it doesn't come back again. What's the root cause of all of my complaints? What's the root cause of all of my excessive giveaway? What's the root cause of my device failing in the field? What's the root cause of, and whenever, and I conduct that and a lot of times, and we're going to get into it, when we conduct a root cause, it's not just engineering department, it's a whole company-wide endeavor, because everyone's going to look at the problem with a different set of eyes that'll help us ensure we can eliminate. Maybe we're not expressing the requirements or our feature functions properly, and we're misconstruing to the marketplace the expectations of what our solution is or what the product is. So therefore, when to conduct the root cause analysis is when your problems need to be rooted out. When you want to get down and say, I want to continuously improve my process, I want to eliminate this particular concern, so I'm going to conduct a RCA, a root cause analysis, to properly identify. Now, I didn't put this in here, but in my conversation, I'm going to call it the umbrella messages, we're documenting what we do. We have to document this information. And a little bit later, I'm going to show you how we can thoroughly document the root cause analysis and the CAPA. How to conduct a root cause analysis? There's ASQ, different APICs, different companies, different organizations that'll help you go through this. This is, I would say it's a learn. You do your first root cause analysis, you do your second. It's a process. You learn how to go through this, because when you look at something, a lot of times, number one can take a lot of times of trying to define what is the real problem. But problem identification is essential. I don't want to call AAA and he replaces my tires on the left and I got 2 tires flat on the right. I want to make sure I identify the right problem so we address that issue. So identifying the problem, collect data. So I want to get the information, so how I can verify I have the right problem. I want to collect the data, make sure that I have supporting information. Now I'm going to start identifying the causes. what caused this event to happen? What caused this? Now, a lot of times we get into symptoms. And as I mentioned, 5 why is a technique where you could say 5 whys 5 times. You may say it 7 times. But another one is a fishbone. A fishbone is another technique, investigation tool that'll help you get to the root cause. And we're going to talk about man-machine method, the 6 M's of the fishbone, Ishikawa method. Another one we might get into is not, fault trees. There's a lot of different tools in the RCA toolbox to help you get to the root cause of a problem. Once we identify some solutions, we must implement the change. And think of number 5 is where I'm throwing in my CAPA. So hidden in that number 5 is going to be my corrective action and my preventive action. And then we monitor. Some companies, well, if you look at an 8D process, 8D CAPA, they're going to have a section where they call it lessons learned. You look at another CAPA process from a different industry, let's say life sciences, they'll call it effectiveness review, similar processes. But how do we know that the root causing CAPA actions and preventive actions we implemented 6 months ago are effective today? So they'll do a lessons learned or effectiveness review.
Very good.
Here it is. Oh, I'm sorry. And once again, if I know we have questions at the end. If I go too deep, I guess you can't interrupt me. But I'm in my zone, and I just want to
keep rolling, man. This is great. We got to a Pareto chart already, so we're rolling, man. Keep it going.
Awesome. And here, like I mentioned 2 of them. I mentioned it is not, a fault tree. Mentioned a 5 why, a 6 M. But there's a lot of investigation tools. Here's one, like when you look at the Pareto chart, 80%, 20% of your concerns are generated by 80%. So what you can do is look at your Pareto chart. You can look at a 5 whys, and I have some more detail of this information. You can look at your fishbone, and that's where we can diagram and look at different things. And then you can have failure modes and effects, which says this failure is because of these particular reasons, FMEAs and DMAICs coming from your design side. So this information all comes together to help you think of it as a closed loop circle, because as we get certain information, it's a feedback loop that we can make our FMEAs, make our information a little more valuable. So if we do come across this particular problem, event, issue again, we have the knowledge to build upon how we can resolve the issue faster. All right, here's an example of a 5 why. Define the problem. There's a classic 5 why example on YouTube and the internet. It talks about the Washington Monument, where it had some problems and they thought it was the birds, and then they found out it was something else. But they went through this systematic process to find out that it was it was about turning on the lights, attracting the gnats, which attracted the birds, which attracted the chemicals. It was an extensive root cause analysis that went through a 5 why exercise to determine why something happened. But when you look at it, you define the problem. Why did my customer complain? Why are they complaining now? Why didn't they complain before? And you go through this process and you get to a root cause of why something occurred. And it's just, and then if you have kids or grandkids or your little people, they ask why, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, why? Because they're trying to get to a part where they can understand. And by employing this exercise, you can get to the root cause of some challenges. Another one we have is, I wanted you to see it this way, because I'm going to expose you to our system, which we call SafetyChain, and I can easily capture a 5 why situation within our particular platform. And here's an example where you can see first why, second why, third why. Now, sometimes, like I mentioned, it's the title 5 whys, but I've been in some particular RCA root cause analysis where you go to 6 whys, 7 whys. And here's one, the guy, he said, well, can you only use one investigation technique? No, we're going to use as many techniques as possible to get to the root cause. So you don't have to only use a 5 why. You don't have to use a 5 why, depending upon its situation. I know in the device worlds, fault trees are good. So you do a fault tree to get down to the root cause of a situation. FMEAs is not is another technique. But once again, these are tools that you can use and employ to ensure that you're getting to the root cause. And I just wanted to show this in 2 ways. One, I was showing you from the form perspective with our solution SafetyChain. And then I wanted to show you how it looks when you have some content in the actual form. So this is just an example of a 5 why form. Now the next one is Fishbone. You know, a lot of times you heard me say earlier, it's 6 M's, but I only see 4 M's and an E and a P, meaning I see materials, methods, measurements, machines, environment, and personnel. Well, I'm going to show you what the other 2 M's are. A lot of times people will call the environment is considered Mother Nature. Others will look at personnel. What do you think the personnel would be called, Aaron?
Meeple?
You want some Jeopardy?
I'm trying to get an M. I'd say man.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Yep.
No, it's all right. You don't want any Jeopardy music, right?
James
So,
got it. James put it in, man.
Exactly, manpower. So I don't want to throw you off. So if you're in one industry, they call it Mother Nature. Another industry, they call it manpower. In this one, you see when I copied this chart, it said environment, personnel. Other people will call environment, I saw as ready for your French, milieu. So it's still an M, but once again, the goal of this one is saying we're going to get to the root cause of the problem and say, is it a material problem? Let's dissect the materials. What are the materials we receive from the suppliers and inside that we created with our processes? What's the methods? What was the measurements? What was the machines used? Were they calibrated? Maybe it was something situational. Was there something going on in an environment? Here we are, we're always doing different tests inside of food with temperature tests. Well, maybe the temperature thermometer wasn't proper and the environment was hotter or colder than what it was supposed to be. So this is just, once again, it's a way of organizing your thought process so you can systematically get to the problem, the root cause of a problem. And once again, with my platform, I wanted to show you how this particular tool, the Fishbone Analysis with its 5 or 6 M's, how it look here. Now notice here it says Atlanta, you describe the problem, potential measurements, sources of measures and different things. And here I put the people in the parentheses, but you can see manpower. It's similar. It's all the same, but just let's say different nomenclatures used based upon your industry. And here's another example where you identify the problem and you see I put machines instead of equipment, manpower instead of people. I should have put this one. I'm gonna come back and put either Mother Nature or milieu, that setting, just so we can be consistent. But once again, when you hear this and now, as I mentioned, like the 8D, the cars and pars, the Kappas, similar information, just different titles, same process. It's really the values in the process.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece of it too, which is, you know, it's going through the process of discovery that's really important, right? You know, yes, you want to get to the answer. Yes, you want to get to the end. I don't think there's anybody on the phone right now with us today, Kevin, that really loves it when they have to go through an RCA. Really just is dying to do their next CAPA. Like that just doesn't happen. We don't have enough time in the day, but it is important getting through these things, making sure that we are aligned internally and even across teams to make sure that we're all pulling on the rope the same direction. Another interesting piece too, you know, you're going to use several different methods, guys. We're going to see a lot of probably I'm how many pictures have you taken of a whiteboard in this process, right? Where you're actually pulling together the fishbone on a big whiteboard. How many clipboards and pieces of paper do you have? You know, are there forms that you're using in your operations that just does what you just saw in kind of the software that we showed you, right? It's all valid, it's all there. It's just getting to that data is really where it gets exciting, because then you can, well, we'll get to that in a little bit, but ultimately, so Kevin, we talked about how many Kappas did you do in 2020? Next poll we're going to launch here very quickly is, how long does it take you to get to the root cause on average? Now, again, this is just big caveat here. This is going to pull up in front of you. We're not sharing any of these. We're not announcing who's saying what. That's not our intention here. It's just to give us a sense of everybody in the room, you know, the virtual room, where you at, how long is it taking you? And it's going to vary widely, right, Kevin? It's going to be, it's always that it depends. You know, different industry, right? Different products. Everything's going to be a little bit different.
And it depends on the severity. And when you look at a problem, is it a major problem? Is it a minor problem? Problems have different levels. Did I just generate a complaint from I mean, every customer is important, but my number one customer has a little more importance. Am I getting these complaints from my number one customer that gives me the most business? Well, maybe I'm going to get my executives and we're going to find the root cause of that as expediently, as fast as possible. So look at this. Oh, this is good.
Yeah,
right.
so I think that's pretty interesting.
And you know what? I want to tie this to the regulations, because once again, I don't know the audience, but certain environments, I know with the FDA, certain things they say, well, you have 7 days to do something. They tell you defined amount. You got 21 days to resolve this type of problem. You got 14 days to do this. So a lot of these time frames are dictated by the industry and the regulations that are implemented on you. So I like to see that 8 to 21, because a lot of regulations will do that. That's impressive that you, once again, 1 to 3 days is awesome. That's great. You get to the root cause and that problem doesn't come back, and you implement your Kappas. Well, once again, it wasn't that wasn't the question. You actually find the root cause. No, that's beautiful. This is a great poll. I like this information. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, and one more just like quick thought here too is, hey, a lot of times how fast you get it done is dependent solely on how fast you get it started. If you wait a little bit, it's gonna take you a little bit longer, right? And there's also this idea of sort of that freshness of data, or, you know, if you wait a week to start an RCA, and let's just be honest, it happens, right? We've got a lot of maybe back orders to fill, and we've got some other priorities, but the freshness, you're not going to remember as much if you wait a little bit later.
Timely start is awesome, and it's amazing because it's fresh in mind, and the problem is at the top of mind. That's what I wanted to say.
Yep.
Now, yep. I know this is an overview webinar of root cause, root RCA, how it informs CAPA. But I wanted to show you, this is a little bit of my sales hat, but not much of it, because I don't want to blast you with sales, but I just wanted to show you another view of this comprehensive case management of how we at SafetyChain can easily manage your CAPAs, your root cause analysis, manage the various stages you have within that. So if you look here, you see I can look from how many CAPAs are opened, how many are assigned, how many are late. I could see on the left-hand side the different cases that were created. Now, we are an enterprise platform, which means you can have 10 sites in the US, a few sites everywhere else, but I can look at my CAPAs, my cases from a holistic perspective, which means I'm in Tampa, Florida, but we open a CAPA in California, and there's another one open in New York, and it's at various levels and various stages. If you look here in this column here, I have various stages. It says I'm at the assessment phase, I'm at the investigation, maybe we did the findings, and now we're going to do an effectiveness check. So all of the topics and concepts I presented at the beginning of this webinar, you'll see is depicted here in my particular solution. And
what I love about that too is if you really just think about it, sometimes we don't have enough time in our days. And I'm just going to go back a quick slide or two to show this. We don't have enough time in our days to understand what's the most important thing to do, right? In this, when you use a software solution like this, you're going to understand how many are critical. In this case, you see 0 critical, right? But it would give you the ability to say, whoa, hold on, if there's something critical, we need to do that now. Let's focus there and then go and then continue the rest of them, right? Sometimes just knowing where to start with, if you do have multiple CAPAs open, or if you've got an RCA going across a couple of facilities like you were talking about, this is important for management to be able to see that, okay, you're on it, right? So.
Right, and one thing I wanted to bring back, I'm so glad you went back here, Aaron, because I didn't emphasize this, but that company or the polls show that some people are finishing their information or their RCAs or identifying them in 3 days and different time periods. But notice right here with the tasks, management supervisors can see immediately how many tasks are open, how many are done, and how many are late. And it's rightly highlighted which ones are late. So you always have a heartbeat or a pulse of all of your problems, and you can see how are we resolving this on a time period. And when I look at it this way, the next slide, think of the value of that. I could see my task management of my problem solvers. That's what I'll call them, because if I have assigned someone for marketing, engineering, solutions and manufacturing and finance to this problem, because I want all eyes and all participants to ensure that we get a collective solution and a collective resolution and implementation of a solution. I want to have all these people involved, but now I can see it from one comprehensive view. How many do I have at the assessment phase? How many do I have at an investigation phase? Now I'm managing my problems and their resolutions through a comprehensive dashboard. Very powerful, very robust. Another one is, and I'm going to show this screen in 2 ways because I wanted to show it to you with some of my information. So this is what I call one of my colleagues called it a 5-minute read, where we'll take the information that you gather through all those various phases, investigations and assessment, follow-ups, effectiveness reviews, and place it into what I call a 5-minute read. And really, he called it a 5-minute read, and I kind of like that title. But you see right here, I can see the assessment, and I can see the details of what's going on, the case number. When I look at the next slide, I threw in my Fishbone investigation. Now I just scrolled down on the same record and notice I could see investigations, my manpower, machinery, method. Here I could see the 5-minute read of the content that I collected in my investigation. So we could see which techniques and tools were utilized in order to get to the root cause.
Yeah, that's great. And I noticed on there, Kevin, you had a supplier SCAR. Way to go. Like I saw I was like, wait a second, this does extend to your suppliers. And of course, that's a different sort of subset of your RCA. It's kind of like you were talking about earlier, but the extensibility of this is immense, right? And we're not here to sell you software. That's just not it. What we want to do is make sure you understand that when you do get to the data side, when you start using tools like this, you're able to answer questions quicker. You're able to pick up speed. And I just wanted to read a statement somebody just put in. Excuse me. It said, the more people you have involved in an RCA, the better. This is from Bernie. But the more data you have to process, he says, how do you prioritize what CAPA to go with? We're not quite to the question and answer yet, but I wanted to pose that now. He understands. This is Bernie saying, yeah, the more people, the better. But the more data you have to process, how do you prioritize what CAPA to go with? Any quick thought there, and then we'll launch this next poll?
Yes, I look at problems, and it's So I'm going to lean on one particular industry, and it says you have a way of identifying a problem. And when you identify a problem, is this problem a major problem, a minor problem, or a critical problem? So Aaron mentioned earlier that I also work with risks. Well, when I look at a problem resolution, um, I'll go back to my car analogy because it's the most easy. If I have my radio breaks, all right, it's a problem, but it's not a critical problem. My tire is flat and it's 2 a.m. and I'm on the side of the road by myself. That's kind of critical, but I got my family with me now. That's a major, seriously critical problem. I need to resolve it. So when I identify and assess the problem, I can put a risk factor on that particular problem, minor, major, critical. Critical is we need to investigate this now and get it resolved because it's a critical problem with our key customer. Maybe it's a critical SCAR supplier, Kappa, that I'm issuing against my key single source material supplier. Maybe it's a critical problem that occurred against my particular machine that is, I'm in the food business and I have a key freezer that is pivotal to everything I do, and that freezer has a problem. So that's going to slow down my output and throughput of my plant. So direct answer, Aaron, is when I identify that problem, I'm going to identify and label a risk value, minor, major, critical, used in some industries, severe, not severe, different risk level problem identifiers, and that help me as if I'm the CEO or the managers or VPs and say, how do I rank these problems? I want to get them all resolved. I don't want to ride around with no radio forever, but let me get this tire fixed first. Let me fix these brakes. That's a little more essential than this radio into the music. So I hope that long-winded answer addressed some of the questions.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the important steps there is because at the end of the day, Bernie, that's going to be pretty subjective. The best practice is to get this documented. So what does low risk mean? You go to those teams and you say, low risk is this situation when this happens, and then give examples, right? Clear examples. What is medium risk? What is high risk? And then what is critical risk? Document what those mean and make sure everyone agrees to them, right? Sometimes there's just a little bit of process there. You got to go back and forth, maybe a couple of emails just saying, hey, I think it should be this. No, I think it should be this. Well, let's resolve that. And then you just put it on the road. Then you just say, hey, this looks to be critical. Yep, mark it critical, go forward. This is only low. Let's keep the line running. We're not going to slow down. This isn't going to be something where we're going to get into too much safety issues or anything like that. So great question, Bernie. We got another one from Cheryl coming up too, but I wanted to launch the last poll, just kind of, again, getting in the weeds a little bit. Typically, how many departments, I mean, Bernie said it earlier, right? He typed it in. I appreciate your thoughts, Bernie. How many typically, right? Again, this is gonna vary a little bit. How many departments are involved in your RCA and CAPA resolutions? Really want to understand from your standpoint, so you should be able to vote now. Again, we're not sharing this, we're just collecting some information to see, and really it's for everyone on the line to see kind of where they fit in the rest of it. I mean, there's a few hundred people on the phone, so just remember, we're not looking at these individually, we're just literally saying, hey, out of a bunch of people, where are we at? So any guesses, Kevin, where we're going to be at on this poll, just kind of the numbers wise?
I think it should be, well, probably it's complicated. And the reason why, and then that's a catch-all, and we'll see, because in the past 12 months, we hit a new normal. We hit something, problems were not resolved. How do I resolve a problem and I can't go in the plant? How do I resolve a problem and I got to do it by Zoom? And how do I corral other leaders who aren't under my direct control, but I need their information? Oh, look, it was 3. Okay. Right, well, I got a little bit with the 13%. I think I'm 1 and 2 with the polls.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy. We apologize, Sandy. She wasn't able to select one. We did, Kevin. We put in it's complicated because you know what? Sometimes something is just a little complicated. You can't say 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So there is no magic number. We're trying to get it here. There's just no magic number. But involving multiple teams, getting it solved across the organization, across that facility, is going to yield better results longer term. You're going to have less of that same problem pop up. Why? Because you got more brains on it. It's just that simple. The brains that are down the line, that they understand exactly how the cutting is done, or how that machine operates, you know, when it heats up outside or whatnot. There's so many things involved. You need more brains on it. So. All
And
right.
it's
So
really good because think of it like this, Aaron. It's like if I look at everything, if I only have a hammer in my toolbox and every problem is solved with a hammer. But when I bring in other departments, they have a different perspective. When you look at a problem from a marketing perspective versus an engineering versus a finance, we got a total all 360-degree volumetric analysis of this situation where everyone can collect and gather all points of views to ensure we're doing the best way to eliminate this concern.
yep, exactly. Well, we're technologists, Kevin. We're going to always say, you know, we gravitate towards data-driven approaches. Being able to trend things is going to be important longer term. I mean, sometimes, guys, it's really just not having to go and search for that thing that happened last time. Where in the world did we put those? Oh, it's in the filing cabinet over on the other side of the warehouse or whatever. You know, it's being able to also predict and prevent issues when you do this, use a technology or software, and oftentimes. Remember we were talking earlier, Kevin, about, oh, how about training? I've got a question here, and I'm gonna tackle it because it's important, and I think it's something that some of us as manufacturers share. The quicker training, using the technology is going to eliminate some of that training and retraining need because they can't go out of step. You build into the software a way that it's just kind of fail safe, right? You have to fill this form out, you have to weigh that package, you have to take the temperature here, you have to do condensation check there. It just happens, right? So there's less sort of training failures, right? And it's because the system does a lot of the heavy lifting there. So.
And think of it like this: you may have multiple corrective actions, but you're going to have at least 2 preventive actions, and it could be 3 or 4. But depending upon your environment, and I would say most environments, the first corrective action is to update your SOPs, standard operating procedures, because someone operated it not correctly. That's why we had the problem. So if I go through this thorough root cause analysis, so if I'm looking at the part of the preventive action, the PA, I'm going to update my SOPs. Next, I'm going to train people on the SOPs. Now I'm going to have the other actions as part of my preventive actions. But those 2 should be universally the foundation of my preventive actions. Are going to be update my SOPs, update my training, and now let me put in some other actions, preventive actions. But those 2 are, I would say, pretty much universal. All right. Good questions.
Yeah. So we're going to get to some questions real quick, Kevin. I know we're running out a little bit of time. We'll go over probably just a couple minutes because there's a couple good ones here. So Kevin, Cheryl, kind of a statement, not a question, but there's something in here. She says, don't problems and the data that has been collected lend themselves to the method to use for CAPA analysis? Meaning, depending on situations, depending on the data, that's going to inform if you're going to use like your Fishbone or your 5 whys, right?
Yes, and that's true. The data is really important for determining which tools. But I always argue you want to use multiple tools. For example, all of us, some of us who are old enough remember the space shuttle disaster during the 80s. And when they went through their investigation, a 5Y wasn't the appropriate one to get to the root cause of that failure. So they used a fault tree analysis where I look at it, the rocket, and I drilled my way all the way down by looking at, well, what are probabilities of this failure occurring at this level? And you just if we took at it as an inverted bill of material, and I'm just going back through the fault tree method to find out, why did this machine fail? Why did this big device, even it's a rocket, but it's a device, it's a machine. So certain things lends itself to the nature of what you're trying to figure out, will lend itself to a FMEA. Another may be a fault tree. Another may be a 5 why, but I say employ multiples to get to that single source of the problem.
That's interesting. I didn't know that that was the method that is the challenger, if I remember
Yes,
properly.
the challenger is a fault tree method that was deployed. And if you watch the Netflix special on it, it was really a great analysis. And if you look at today, they're always Dr. Fauci, they're talking about corrections and preventive actions. It's used all over the place. Our root cause analysis and corrections and preventive, how do we do different things? You can hear the terminology that we use in this investigation process with our leaders on the news today.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Next question. How do you tackle a situation where one of the whys leads to multiple answers in the next step? Have you encountered that, Kevin?
Multiple answers or multiple symptoms?
Yeah. So there you go.
Exactly. It's well, you know, if you could look at it and really it's like an onion. It could be an onion. You're drilling down and it could be multiple different systems that'll get you to the root cause. And really you want to understand, if I do this, it caused that. Is that intended or is that an unintended cause? Because everything that occurs, whether it's in our manufacturing facility or a product, the engineer should know. There should be no random stuff should occur within my plant if I'm properly managing and set up my plant, because everything should have been thought of or considered. But in reality, we know that's not the case. So if we run into a problem that generates a whole bunch of other problems we didn't anticipate, that means we're doing a thorough job of analyzing and trying to get to that root cause. It's like, oh, I see water in the kitchen. For example, I saw water in the kitchen. Oh, let me pick it up. Well, no, where did the water come from? Oh, Junior didn't drop the glass. Oh, there's a leak under the sink. No, there's a hole in the pipe under the ground. No, the main line busted. It's flooding my yard. So, you know, it goes like that.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever gone through the 5 whys and to this question found there was actually a couple of things going on? Do you ever branch that 5 whys or do you keep it linear? You just follow one down and then open up a separate 5 whys sort of method to that second symptom that you found?
Great question. Because remember when I said you have a 5 why, a lot of people start with the 5 why and think of the branches. When you get to, and I said you can have 7 whys, you can have 9 whys, but really those initial 5 whys may lead you to the fishbone, which has the branches. Because now with that, I'm going to think of it. That's a great segue, Aaron, because you had the couple 5 whys, and now you're going into a branch of a breakout. If you look at that fishbone, just a fish with the different bones, you're going either down a man problem, a machine problem, a method problem, a material problem. So it just gives you an organized way to structure your thought process to get to it. And really that branching out is your fishbone.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Okay, good. Few more questions. We were picking on training earlier, or I guess I was. I asked, would you accept training for corrective action? Now, I'll take a stab at this one. Kevin, come over the top if I'm off base, but I think you can accept training as a corrective action. But if you find yourself always coming back to training, that's when you have to do a little bit more investigation, because if it keeps coming up, you haven't been able to prevent it, right? That's it's part and parcel with CAPA. And so go deeper, right? Why is the training not performing right? Oh, maybe it's a system, or maybe it's we don't have the right training in place, or maybe we don't have a right leader that's set up to train people properly. There's a lot of different things that can kind of go on. If you find yourself training a lot or finding that as your corrective action, keep questioning, just get more curious.
Well, I used to think like that for a while, and then I was in the aerospace industry, A&D, aerospace and defense, and I spoke with one of the representatives I was working with, and he said, well, do you think it'd be acceptable that, the plane had an issue and we ran into the mountain because it was a training issue? No, we're not going to accept that. No, it's not a training issue. Training is a symptom of a failure of a process from something else. Why Why was this person not trained thoroughly in the first place so this problem didn't occur? I need to get down to, was it a failure of the SOP? Oh, it's a training issue. Is it because the SOP wasn't properly written and therefore they did what they were supposed to do? Or is it a failure because the SOP was written properly and you didn't read and sign off on it? Or so there's a deeper reason than just training. It's a failure of the SOP. Well, why was the SOP not written properly? Oh, because Kevin Lee wrote it instead of the engineer who should have written the SOP. Why did you, Kevin Lee, write the marketing SOP and you work with the engineers? There's a deeper reason for, you know what I mean? It's I bring in my colleague that ran the webinar and it wasn't as smooth as Aaron's webinar. Well, why? Oh, well, this is my cousin. I just brought him here. That's not a training issue. No, that's no. There's something always under that training issue, and I wouldn't accept the training.
Yeah, I think there's times you're going to accept training, absolutely, and run it through, and then you may find later maybe it wasn't. But one scenario that maybe some of us have in our plants that could lead to you seeing training a lot, which is if you use either migrant labor or part-time labor, right? And that person is going to be in your facility for, let's say, a week, and then maybe you don't see them again because they went to a different place, right? That's a reality. So being able to train is also a factor of the ability of a person to learn, okay? Know the difference, understand that, speak about it, open that up in your Fishbone, get it on the board, talk about it, and see if that is something that can help that training issue if you do see this, because we do have a lot of questions about training right now. So I really appreciate everyone staying a few extra minutes with us today. Somebody asked if we had some more RCA training resources available. We don't typically train on RCA, but we're happy to try and reach out to you following this and see if there's some things that we can find for you, because it's not about us providing it. It's the whole thing about Beyond Compliance is making sure you have what you need to go and do your job better. So we'll follow up with you there. Lots more on SafetyChain.com. We're over time, but Kevin, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and going through this whole RCA Kappa, how they kind of combine, how you kind of go through them. Appreciate your time today.
Hey, I appreciate you. You can tell, I don't know, I apologize if I was over enthusiastic or zealous, but I love this stuff. And my goal is to help companies, to help them grow in their enterprise. So thanks for allowing me to speak to your representatives, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. So everyone, let's take this, go back, do some 5 whys. I saw a couple of typos, by the way, on the slides. So I'm going to go do a 5 whys with my team.
It's a training issue. That was a training issue.
No worries, guys. Hey, have a great week. Thanks again, Kevin, and that'll end us for today for Beyond Compliance. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.